Will Sparks fly as two disgusted mums spend a week on tour with Cradle of Filth.
It's devil's work and no good will come of it.
So you think it's acceptable then to represent Satanism and the devil?
They're like animals, you know.
These are words, that's all they are. They're words.
I call it evil. I really do.
Living with the Enemy, next Wednesday at 9 on BBC Two.
It's interesting, it's difficult, it's boring.
I find myself being more of a secretary nowadays.
You never have the same day twice.
We try to do our day-to-day job within the constraints of the law.
I've got my own set of ideas and rules, really.
It's a small few out there that make life hell for the rest of us.
Yeah, I break the law all the time.
It's down to people like me to put people on the straight and narrow again.
And make a difference.
It means so much to so many. Close Up finds out why now on BBC Two.
This is BBC Radio 4, 92 to 95 FM and 198 longwave.
It's 6 o'clock on Monday the 27th of July. Good morning, this is Today with James Naughty and Sue McGregor.
This morning's headlines. Tony Blair's due to announce his long-awaited ministerial reshuffle today. The changes are said to be more extensive than had been expected.
I'm well, how are you? Have a good time in Miami?
Those wholesale changes to immigration rules will be done.
Well, you don't listen to me. I tell you how to handle it, you don't listen to me. And everybody's frightened of you. Everybody's frightened of you now. Don't. You're beginning to panic. I know, but you see what I mean? All this builds up and builds up and builds up until it becomes desperate. You see what I mean? You let it fester, and it festers, and it festers, and then you become... I'm the managing director of a PR company. We're a small to medium-sized PR boutique, I think the Americans call it. We specialise in the entertainment business, so whatever entertains people, we're interested in doing. No, but we're panicking. We're panicking because of the time scale. There's no need to panic, because there is more life in the momentum that's been gained now. Okay? Oh, okay, I'll speak to you later.
13 minutes past 6. Let's take a first look at the morning papers, and of course it's reshuffle fever, but what becomes evident from the front pages of the paper is that nobody really knows what's going on, apart from the fact that Dr. Jack Cunningham will become the enforcer. All sorts of profiles of him, the man who, as it is pointed out in several papers...
You go through so much bullshit during any day, you've got to be rooted, you've got to be centred to something. Most mornings begin in the same way. I pick up the Walkman, I stick the earphones in my ear and tune into Radio 4. My lifestyle here is a perfect balance, really, from the metropolitan whiz of London and the sort of tranquility of here. I'm very lucky.
Shadow Foreign Secretary Michael Howard. Mr. Howard, if there's going to be a tough new unit within the Foreign Office as a result of what Robin Cook may announce today and a general tightening up of procedures, that's something that you'd welcome?
Well, of course, but the most important change, if Robin Cook is to stay at the Foreign Office, despite the shambles which he's created and the damage which he's done to the country...
Well, are you predicting he might go?
Well, I don't know what the report is going to say, but I certainly think that what happened can be directly traced to...
The Today programme is crucial for me, and also it's great to see the way my trade actually use it. It was always great fun. If a client's on the Today programme, it's more likely to be picked up by other media. It's a media listen, and you can sometimes get to work to find, 10, 20 phone calls from other news media who want your client.
Well, as I say, I don't know what the report is going to say, and of course what the Select Committee does is entirely a matter for them. But one of the things...
I don't think I'm a typical Radio 4 listener. I hope I'm not.
We certainly need to see the document.
Michael Howard, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I heard that they were doing a new version of Mastermind with Peter Snow on Radio 4. And I spoke to this nice young man, the producer, and he told me, to my surprise, I've been accepted for the radio version. And he asked me some questions over the phone, and I did not too badly on those, And he told me that of the subjects I submitted, they'd chosen the Gilbert and Sullivan first, and if I was fortunate enough to get through, Arsenal Football Club. On Radio 4, I listened to quizzes such as Round Britain Quiz and Brain of Britain. And I feel that the standard of the questions is high, and you learn from them, and I like pitting my wits against the contestants, see how I get on, And I understand there's a new one on antiques starts tomorrow on Radio 4 that I'm very much looking forward to.
Full orchestra. Guess what? Hidden treasures, quote, unquote, and Mastermind. A quiz a day, Monday to Friday at 1:30.
Oh, Doctor, I'm losing my marbles. I itch and I twitch like a louse. Oh, didn't I mention the cause of this tension? I've got Radio 4 in my house.
That brings us to the end of the shipping forecast. This is BBC Radio 4.
I was brought up a Radio 4 listener. Got radios in all rooms of the house. I even married a man who runs the comedy department for BBC Radio, so it's very much in my blood and in my life.
The half-price water bucks in Southern Water. Do we really?
And I thought, well, what if you did have Radio 4 moving in? You and yours poking around in the bathroom. So, somewhat fancifully, I wrote a poem about it.
Arranged on the stairs, in white coats, men in pairs, demand I engage with the sciences. I can hear you and yours as they crouch behind doors, rooting out faulty appliances. I look out at my patio in panic, hearing all too familiar voices. Poking round in the slime, gardener's question time, pouring scorn on my shrubbery choices.
When I heard that Radio 4 was going to change, and change quite dramatically, I was alarmed. I was worried because I'd got into a routine, I enjoyed certain programmes, I got used to knowing what I was going to listen to, and suddenly everything seemed to be being thrown up in the air. And cherished programmes were going off the air, and I wasn't at all sure that these changes were necessary.
There is one. This is my favourite. The use of themed background music and inappropriate jingles is the greatest threat to civilization as we know it. I think Radio 4 had a very honourable, successful past, but I think the time was ripe for change in Radio 4.
It is a very long letter.
Yeah, well, if civilization's coming to an end, a note is not sufficient. We started 18 months ago looking at Radio 4 from top to bottom. Our problem was that a hefty proportion of the audience that was leaving, and in particular at the end of the Today programme, was not going to work or going away from the radio. It was staying by the radio but choosing not to listen to Radio 4. So a lot of the changes have been about persuading the audience, cajoling the audience to go on and sample just that bit more. So we had to start from the bottom and rebuild the shape of the network.
OK, should we just go for it? Caroline Payton makes a general point about the way Radio 4 is now structured. She says, of your arrangements, he seems to want to create a seamlessly endless day of listening when one programme will effortlessly transform itself into the next, and listeners' fingers will atrophy and minds become numb from not having to actually choose the programmes they want to listen to and switch off in between. If you leave aside the pejorative tone, that's not an entirely inaccurate description of what you do want to do, is it?
It's not an inaccurate description in terms of what we're trying to do. We are trying to pass people on from one programme to another, and the other thing we're trying to do is tell them about the vast riches. It's the most complicated, the most diverse network, and that's why also we have the trailers that have caused comment and feedback. We built a new road system, and we sure need the signs telling you where you're going.
Hello, Elaine Showalter is a feminist critic and a historian of psychiatry, and her new book has been very controversially received in the USA. It's called History.
This is my journey after soul-searching with my dog first thing in the morning. And I use this Land Rover as my pride and joy. The bad news is that somehow I got to inform the British media that Liza Minnelli has cancelled all her live dates. which means that we've got at least 60 journalists to return tickets to, and somehow persuade everybody that the truth is that she's ill. Now, whether they choose to believe me or not, there hangs a rub.
I mean, I don't think you answered the question I gave you, to be quite honest.
I didn't get to finish.
Well, that's a fair enough point as well, but maybe you were drifting away and I want to concentrate it a bit more.
I think the Radio 4 audience is resistant to change. They get into habits and they don't want to move. They're comfortable. Radio 4, it's a friend in the home.
It's been a century. That's a travesty of
It's not a travesty at all, and I think that the language around...
The time is just now 10 minutes to 12, and this is the end of the home service for today and for all days. Tomorrow at 6:35 a.m. we become Radio 4.
Radio 4 began in 1967, but before that it was the Home Service, and it became the Home Service in 1939, saw us all through the war, Winston Churchill, J.B. Priestley and so on. So when it became Radio 4, it brought with it that huge freight of familiar voices and the feeling of something you could rely on.
Now, you know, he really loves you when he sends you an orchid. It's sold as an aphrodisiac, you know.
My job is to write about radio for the readers of the Daily Telegraph. With regard to Radio 4, it's the heartland network of a lot of my readers.
When you live in London, it's really hard to get a quiet place to listen to anything. Listening at home, there's burglar alarms going off and everything. Listening outside, there's planes going overhead, there's traffic and everything. So what I've discovered is that if I come somewhere where I can focus on other things, where my senses are delighted by and distracted from the noise, I can concentrate on the noise in my head. So I come here to the Chelsea Physic Garden with a great clanking bag of cassettes. I walk around and around, and looking at it now, I can see where I went to Japan. It was over there by the Whooping Mulberry. There was a whole Japan season, and that was where I went to Japan. Round here is sort of Peter Tinniswood. This is where all of Peter Tinniswood's great old men and old ladies have spoken to me, and the great dreams have unfolded. I've walked down by the bulrushes with William. I've been here with Jane Austen. I've been here with Shakespeare. I've been here with Anthony Trollope. I've been here with Alistair Cook. I've been here with Henry James. I've been here with Henry James several times. I've been around the world here. I've been to the Caspian Sea. I think I've been to the Arctic. I've definitely been to the races.
Because of its wide appeal that the orchid is under constant threat. In the 19th century, entire colonies of the flower were wiped out by...
When you're tuning up and down the airwaves, you know the instant that you've hit Radio 4, because mostly it's speech, but it's speech of a particular kind. It's not phone-in. It's speech made into art. It's people you wouldn't normally meet. It's ideas you would never encounter. It's quite unique. What James Boyle's done is a monumental rearrangement of the schedule and the time clock of Radio 4. It's almost as if somebody has stolen in and taken your clock from the wall. It's very personal. That's why people feel possessive about it. It's why they resist change.
My castaway this week is a singer. No overnight star. He's been in the business for 25 years, and it took him half that time, 9 albums and about 100 songs.
You can't possibly change the time of Desert Island Discs, because those of us that are shackled to domestic trivia and have to do Sunday lunches, and particularly when people are coming, that you suddenly hear Desert Island Discs at its new time and you think, Christ, I haven't put the parsnips on. I mean, because it used to be 12:30, now it's, God knows, 11 o'clock or something. So that throws one into total chaos.
I hope I'm allowed to choose one of my own songs here. It's called The Simple Truth.
Child is born in the desert sun.
But then it's nice if they actually choose their own records, like Christa Berg did yesterday, because then you can actually feel moral indignation. And I actually do get quite angry with the radio sometimes. I used to get very angry with any questions when they had lots of really marvellous bigots on. So with the bigots, you could sort of shake your fist and even actually go over and shake the radio on occasions.
My castaway Christa Berg singing his composition, The Simple Truth.
Radio 4 is a great companion. I listen to it a great deal. When you live alone and you don't have somebody to talk to, you can get the human voice and the comfort of talk at second hand, and it does help to fill that void.
This is London. A quarter of an hour ago, the Prime Minister came to the bar of the House and handed to the Speaker a message from His Majesty the King. Here is the text of the message, which was read by the Speaker.
I've had a love of the voice on radio, I suppose partly because it's a memory that goes back into my childhood and therefore is very deeply rooted in me.
To which I succeeded on the death of my father.
Well, that was a fairly early recording from Alvar Liddell's 37-year career with the Home Service, which later became Radio 4. But even there, I think you can tell the sound, which is really the quintessential BBC voice. And for that reason, Alvar Liddell has always been one of my BBC radio heroes, and his voice is a particularly prized item in my own archive of voice recordings.
Of which country is Bratislava a major river port?
Is it back here?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
In the context of gardening, what are dannocks?
They're hedge sparrows, aren't they? I've concentrated more on the Gilbert and Sullivan, going through all the librettos of all the Savoy operas. I think Gilbert's our greatest English librettist. You know, you don't have much opera in English. You've got Purcell and Benjamin Britten and one or two others, but it's not, you know, because our plays, we have so many spoken plays, we don't have the opera, but old Gilbert is a master of, you know, the Italian 8 rhymes. He writes, you know, all kinds of things.
If you can sort of close your mind to what they're answering on their specialist subject, you can actually sort of be doing some more revision in your mind, can't you?
No, that's not how it works.
A rapture, rapture, when love's votary, flushed with capture, seeks the notary. Joy and jollity, then is polity, reigns frivolity, rapture, rapture. And of course, frivolity, polity and jollity, examples of Italian rhymes.
Hello and welcome to I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, where fun and laughter get on like a mouse on fire. No visit here would be complete without taking in the City Art Gallery. Its collection includes works from L.S. Lowry's Matchstick Men period, followed by his Pipe Cleaner People period.
It's the Monday Club trip to Leeds, and we're leaving Glasgow heading down to go to a recording of I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue. We are all big fans of the programme, and about 4 years ago, I organised the first trip to recording in Chester, and since then, it's something that we've organised every year or so. The Monday Club is a gathering of people who get together every week, talk, chat, listen to I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue when it's on the radio, enjoy good food, good wine, good company, and really just have a laugh.
On with the next round now. As we have Paul Merton with us today, not to play our version of Have I Got News for You would be a criminal waste of his unique talent. Still, never mind. Instead, we have a great...
We all have a bit of silly streak and a dry sense of humour which makes us laugh at the programme, I think. I mean, other people who are not, you know, regular listeners don't maybe get the same buzz from the programme that we do. In the next 24 hours, we'll probably like to hear something in the region of 18 episodes of the programme.
Ian Paisley's first words. And furthermore! As if he'd been saying something earlier.
Time now for a game called What is the Question? This game is not to be confused with the amusing party game played by French philosophers entitled What is a Question? Okay, teams, now I'll read out a series of answers and I'd like you please to suggest the original questions likely to have prompted them. Paul, he stuffs animals.
What does Rolf Harris do when the cameras aren't on him?
And so, ladies and gentlemen, as the blue-caggled rambler of time confronts the colourblind bull of destiny, and the dead pigeon of fate decomposes in the water tank of eternity, I notice it's the end of the show. So from Samantha, myself, the teams and fine people of Leeds, it's goodbye.
Yep. Where do you actually come? Where in Scotland? Glasgow. Oh, because that's where we were trying to go.
Well, that's right. We were trying.
That would have saved a lot of trouble, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we were. Yeah.
Yeah. Next.
You must come for. You come for.
You'll all leave when we go to Glasgow.
No. We'll have you around for dinner afterwards.
So did you say? Do we mean to say you're going to be listening to tapes of it going?
Yeah. Well, every episode since 1992.
So what were you doing before 1992? You didn't have a tape recorder?
Very lax of you. 20 missing years.
Radio 4 audience is the most committed of all the audiences. I took great pains to give them information about the changes, which meant quite a big bureaucratic job. You have to write tens of thousands of bits of paper to your audience.
Well, at this minute, I mean, having promised that you'll do so, have you not really had any second thoughts yet?
My whole premise has been to work in partnership with my listeners. If I have second thoughts, I have to go out and do it in consultation with them. So it's not a matter of some mad autocrat sitting making precipitate changes. The whole thing's been a mutuality. Instead of second thoughts, I've got the confidence of most of my listeners behind me.
And I felt what was particularly galling about these changes was if they'd been imposed, if he said, look, I'm the new controller of Radio 4, I'm going to give you these changes whether you like them or not. But what actually was happening was he was saying that we have asked you people. He was saying, I heard him over the radio on feedback, we have asked you, Jenny Baines, we've asked you, and you want these changes. No, I don't want these changes. I was being used as a punter to justify the changes.
I can't build a schedule around individuals. I've got to take account of their broad lives, and what we've done here is as a result of what listeners told us in the first place.
All's up then, is it, James? You naughty Scot. For programmes that inform and entertain. Thou axeth my best post-meridian slot, ere salt tears stain the end of this quatrain. Hark, listeners of England now abed. Ignite, write, make this lean controller sorry, for I refute research that shows the punter to be in league with Radio 4's new junta.
Hello and welcome to Fridays You and Yours with Trixie Rawlinson and John Wayne. There's nothing guaranteed to make food move off the supermarket shelves faster than the promise that it's good for your health.
Once upon a time there was BBC Radio, a few independents, tucked away in metropolitan centres. But now the choice is enormous. Speech, music, drama, whatever. And I still think the idea of getting a dummy made up of Johnny Vaughan, putting a motor in the back of it and floating it down the Thames would be cool, wouldn't it? You'd be drinking a pint of Strongbow. We could have sightings of the floating Johnny Vaughan. I think it's great. I've got a busy life, I'm dotting around all over town. One moment in a restaurant, next minute in a meeting. I think everybody's time is under pressure at the moment. So if Radio 4 is going to sort of maintain its edge, you've got to sharpen up and make it radical in terms of the change.
I've got most of the early stuff on side, but there's a line that
You've got to find new audiences. You've got to bring new people to it. No matter how unpalatable it is, even to me, both professionally and in my listening from a leisure point of view. Yes, of course it's uncomfortable. We all don't like change, but change is good. Genius. But, there's Gaza.
And now the shipping forecast issued by the Met Office at 2343. There are warnings of gales in Trafalgar, Finisterre, Seoul, Lundy, Fastnet, Irish Sea, Shannon, Rockall, Malin and Hebrides. The general synopsis at 1800. From Holyhead to the Mull of Galloway.
Well, for the last 7 years I've been illustrating the shipping forecast. So I've been going out to all the sea areas and coastal stations mentioned in the shipping forecast, and I'm painting every one. And today I'm going out on New Haven lifeboat to paint Greenwich Light Vessel Automatic.
It's 17 minutes to 1 o'clock.
I can't really remember we've ever taken an artist to sea with us, no.
No, not at all. No, it's been a first for us today.
Tell me where we're going now.
Well, I've been listening to the shipping forecast since the mid-50s when I was a child, because it used to go out at about 2 o'clock. And it was always followed by Listen with Mother. It's very precise information delivered in a very particular way. It does have its own poetry because of that, because it has a very enigmatic quality, like a lot of poetry.
A lifeboat's built to obviously go in all sorts of weathers. Well, going forward it's going up and down, which we call pitching. But then also you get the wind and sea perhaps blowing on the side of the boat, which starts to make it roll, which also then starts to give you a corkscrew motion. And this corkscrew motion, unfortunately, does tend to give people motion sickness, or as we call it, sea sickness.
For breakfast I had the full works, the full English breakfast. And as soon as I started it, I thought, I don't think I should be doing this. I knew it was wrong. But it looked so nice out of the window, I thought it's going to be a nice calm day, the sea will be flat, it'll be all right. Sorry, I don't feel too good.
From Holyhead to the Mull of Galloway. Force 6 to gale force 8. From Holyhead to the Mull of Galloway. Force 6 to gale force 8. Bell Rock. Bell Rock. From Holyhead to the Mull of Galloway. Force 6 to gale force 8.
The World at Once. This is James Cox in Westminster with 30 minutes of news and comment on the day that Tony Blair has his first big cabinet reshuffle. Harriet Harman is among 4 cabinet ministers sacked. Peter Mandelson becomes president of the Board of Trade.
How sick did I feel? Very sick, actually. I felt really awful. I managed to sketch the boat, and that was the main thing. I wanted to actually go out there and see the real thing and sketch it, and I did that, so I'm satisfied with that. Some of the sea areas are just blocks of sea, so it's been a bit of a challenge to get to them, and I've had to plan them like a military operation, most of them.
From Holyhead to the Mull of Galloway. Force 6 to gale force 8. From Holyhead to the Mull of Galloway. Force 6 to gale force 8. Bell Rock. Bell Rock. From Holyhead to the Mull of Galloway. Force 6 to gale force 8. It's 17 minutes to 1 o'clock. 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 It's 17 minutes to 1 o'clock.
All hail, great judge, to your bright rays we never grudge ecstatic praise. All hail, may each decree as statute rank, and never be reversed in bang. All hail, all hail. I haven't had much chance to do much general knowledge revision, but you know, I do my best. You know, I want to give as good a performance as I can, you know.
OK, let's move on. Caroline Payton of South West London takes us on to Radio 4's weekday lunchtime, a period about which there's been a lot of anguished comment. She says that a half-hour World at One is far too short, the quiz programmes are futile, and the Archers comes on just when everyone has to go back to work. Could you answer that Archers point first? We've had a great many letters about precisely that point.
Right, let's be honest, we always knew this was going to be a problem. The notion was, let's pull people across 2 o'clock by putting one of our best and our favourite programmes there. For those who have to go back to work, there are 2 more chances to hear it.
If we're spending all that time on the couch, I want to get a decent holiday in between.
Of course you do.
Trouble is, it we're going to be hard enough to afford 3 days, but now we're going for 6.
I don't like to miss an episode if I can possibly help it. So I set a timer on my machine and I tell the machine to record the Archers.
Have we got any French dressing, darling, do you know?
Have a look, my love.
I'm sure we got some made up.
You mustn't talk over the Archers. You mustn't talk over the Archers.
And if I've found I've forgotten to put the tape machine on or it hasn't recorded, oh, it's awful. I mourn for days.
Maybe in the middle fridge.
Do me a favour. Don't have to tell you how pushed we are at the moment.
And there's Eddie doing his best to make me feel guilty.
Wondering who's going to cook their meals while you're gone.
I reckon they bump fry-ups while they're...
For now, it's...
I was on pilgrimage actually in Russia, and a very senior bishop, who I shan't identify on air, said, "Oh dear, this is so difficult because we're missing the Archers." And I said, "No, you are not." I said, "When I get home, I will post you the last 2 weeks of the Archers, and then you'll be able to listen to it." And he and his wife were so relieved.
Not on the bottom shelf. Glasses go on the top shelf. Oh. How many years have we had this dishwasher?
But people are much more real, you see, than you are to me. I mean, you may be a figment of my imagination, but the people in the Archers are absolutely real, as far as I'm concerned, and they absolutely exist.
It's not another old radio programme. It's my world. It is the door to the enchanted garden. And sometimes, you know, you don't believe things in the outside world. I mean, I didn't believe salmonella and BSE until they happened in Ambridge.
Speciality food producers?
John must have booked a stand. Those are the details and the tickets.
I see.
The pleasure of any long-running fiction, whether it's Coronation Street or Brookside or EastEnders or any of them, the good ones, the characters always learn. I mean, you are there, you are the silent partner in this dialogue, and your knife stops and you say, "Don't do that, Jill. Don't you remember when so-and-so was sick? You know, you noticed the signs then. Don't say it's that now." And gratifyingly, sometimes they echo just what you said. It's the most wonderful feeling. I mean, you are a real significant part of this audience. It's a magic circle.
But if we're ever going to expand, this seems like a good way to do it.
OK, perhaps. But if you're going to bother, you'd have to work harder than you've ever worked before. Well, it's not a question of turning up on the day of the show and dishing out bits of pork. You've got your publicity to organise.
I think Radio 4 is actually run by John Humphreys, Jim Naughty, Sue McGregor and Eddie Grundy. It's like that. The Archers is the other programme that consistently draws in a very, very large audience, 1 million people every night.
You've got to admit that the situation is getting ridiculous. With the Bentley, I mean. Oh, careful.
What about weather? There used to be received thinking that the summer was a time when there was less listening. If, as in the past, you pay service to the misperception that it's a hostile audience, then I think what you do is buy into a pattern of decline, because you daren't change, you daren't move, you pay more attention to press than you do to the editorial integrity of your programmes. So it includes our target audience now, the occasionals?
Yeah, it includes.
I think we've thrown off the shackles of our own misperception that we were penned in by a hostile audience. We're not. We're actually encouraged and buoyed up by an audience that's very proprietorial and very tough and very demanding, and that's different.
It's 5 o'clock. Welcome to PM with Claire English at Westminster, where Tony Blair has reshuffled.
One of the reasons I attribute the violence of my reaction to the change of Radio 4 is that my own life had gone through quite a lot of changes. For 25 years, I'd been a teacher. For the last 20 of those years in a colleges of further education. However, strange things started to happen. We became human resources, not lecturers. Students were called units of funding. All sorts of rather appalling things happened, but one carried on teaching to the best of one's ability. And then they brought in new contracts, which were effectively a pay cut. I ultimately would not sign the contract. Several of us would not sign, and we were told that we would therefore be dismissed. It was ironic that we got these dismissal notices the first day of the new Labour government. Double disillusionment, because one thought, hey, education, education, education. Tony Blair is going to change all this. And it was that disillusionment about change within the Labour Party, a party that I'd worked for really reasonably consistently for 18 years, together with my own change. I felt like a jilted lover. And that was when Radio 4 came to my rescue and became the rhythms of my working day and the voices all around the house. What happened? It all got changed.
In Princess Ida, who complains he does all the good he can, yet everybody says I'm such a disagreeable man?
King Garma.
Correct. Who tells Patience he's loved her with a Take your time and answer this one at your leisure. Who tells Patience that he's loved her with a Florentine 14th century frenzy for full 15 years?
Bunthorne.
No, I'm afraid it's not. It's Archibald
I'm
Grosvenor.
not doing very well on these.
All right, Patricia Erridge, you have scored 8 points in the first round.
There does seem to be a BBC trend to the recognisable, the familiar, the feeling that you're not likely to enjoy this unless the star name is presenting it. The Radio 4 charm is that you never know who you're going to meet next, or you shouldn't. Now you do, because the whole point of it is that it's predictable. The pool of presenters seems to be smaller than it was. There are fewer encounters with interesting strangers.
No, sorry, we have a problem here. You think there was one more pass. Right. Just relax a moment. Right. They're now going to listen to your whole round so you can relax, Pat, and see where I boobed or they boobed. We're going to play some restful music for you so that you don't sort of all get up and walk out. Right. Yes, I wonder which one it was.
Yes, I don't think I don't feel part in that one. I understand that the stopwatch packed up. A thing they've not had happen before. I think it's me. I've got a sort of touch of the Uri Gellers where machinery is concerned.
If anything, I thought I was sort of very generous. I mean, but Palmieri I gave you.
Well, I thought it was just a commercial break so that Pat could keep Peter Snow entertained, to tell the God's honest truth. She certainly did.
Mel's a follower of yoga, so she's telling me to do all this positive thinking and all that. I said, it's no good if you don't know the answers. How much
I'm
positive
not sure. I thought you were positive thinking. It was quite clever the way you sort of angled towards the Cold Harbour Tower, you know. Yes, you didn't get the Palace Peeper right, did you?
No, that's right.
You said I don't know, and I wrongly, I gather, said that. But I then told you what it really was. I should have said it was a pass. So, Patricia, at the end of round one, you've scored 8 points.
I felt a lot of companionship coming to me from the radio when it wasn't available from any other source. I remember my father was lying on the sofa in the front room, and he and my sister were playing a little game, and she was laughing and giggling as he sort of tickled her and made her fall off the sofa. And she said to him, "I do love you, Daddy." And he said, "I love you too, darling." And by that time, I'd come in and tried to join in, and not wanting to be left out, I said, "I love you as well, Daddy." And he looked at me with real hate in his eyes, and he said, "I loathe you." And I think my response to that was to go away and make plans for escape. I would play truant for weeks at a time and just go off to the woods with my own portable radio and sit under the trees or in the back of an abandoned car and listen to the BBC Home Service. And I listened not just to the programmes, but to the voices and the way announcers spoke. And it seemed to me a very musical experience then. Not so much now.
Good evening and welcome to Late Tackle. In the midst of soccer mania, you might be tempted to think that other sports are doing poorly by comparison. Well, I'm afraid you'd be way off the mark, because the fastest growing spectator sport is, wait for it, greyhound racing. Lynn, have you been to a dog track?
No, I haven't. No, I've never wanted chicken in a basket quite that much.
Oh, then that's a bit unkind. Is it because there's a sort of certain social stigma associated with dog racing?
No, I think that report was very interesting because it actually drew attention to what there is about it, which is that it's a time warp thing. I think it feels like you would be going back into the 50s and you'd have to, have an Ealing film accent or something to get in. So I don't know.
James Boyle's thrown some old programmes out. I miss Sport on 4. I miss it sorely. I've tried to listen to the one at 11 o'clock at night on a Friday night, and I can't warm to it.
So I don't think I approve.
Is this because Cliff Morgan was more familiar? Well, possibly.
What about you, buy a dog. It's only 300 quid or something. You could be an owner.
And, when I was at Palace, Andy Thorne, he was the dog man there. He wanted me to get involved, and I think he said something like 100 quid, 4 of us get the dog.
I find myself sitting writing my piece, and I write New Radio 4. The thing that it has in common with New Labour is it does seem to be a lot more style than substance. A lot more, we have consulted you, we know what you think, we know what you are doing. The guidelines to producers said things like, people are not yet getting ready to eat their evening meal. And you think, how do you know that? How do you know that? People eat their evening meal at different times of day in different parts of the country. It's weird. It's weird.
I know that Arsenal's Dennis Bergkamp won't fly. He had a bad experience and he won't fly. So
this programme was constructed by the controller of Radio 4 and his management team. He decided that at 11 o'clock there should be a programme that talks about sport. I didn't do any of the research. He did the research and he was convinced in his own mind with his management team that this should be there. And I assume that he's targeting the programme at some sports fans, but also people who at that time of the day might just be listening in to Radio 4 as an accompaniment in some way. Perhaps they're getting ready to go to bed, or they're just relaxing at the end of the day. And he's hoping that this programme will have an attractive amount of conversation that will prove attractive to them.
Going up. I wanted to be an announcer very much indeed, because it was something that then I felt I could do well. To be given a sort of public platform from which you could talk effectively about something that interested you seemed to me the best way to live one's life. And so in 1970 I came here, Broadcasting House, and asked to be interviewed. And I got a letter from the head of presentation, and he said that my voice would be considered too old-fashioned. Hello.
Hello, do come in.
My name is Douglas Balder.
Peter Donaldson. Pleased to meet you.
How do you do? I'm very pleased to meet you at long last.
I gather you're something of a radio buff.
Well, yes, and I've been listening to your voice for many years.
Kind of you to say so. Do take a pew,
Thank you very much. I'd love to find out what the job is really like to do.
It is certainly fun to do. It is still fun to do. In a sense, it may be getting less fun and more technical and technological.
You still find it fun to do?
I still find it fun to do, and I still find the adrenaline flows, the armpits tingle as such for a live broadcast.
Does it?
Which is a good thing. I think if it weren't to happen, my days would be over. I think.
How long have you been doing it?
I've been broadcasting for 32 years. I started with Forces Broadcasting in Cyprus in 1966. I fell into it. I just happened to be visiting my father. There is an evolution in broadcasting which is leaving me behind, and that is, I think, towards a more informal style of approach. Not that I want to be a stuffed shirt, and long gone are the days of the dinner jacket and bow tie. I think it can go too far the other way, and I think Radio 4 is heading slowly towards that. But as I'm reaching or coming towards the end of my broadcasting career, I think it's not for me to say. It's the way the world changes. It's not only on Radio 4 and not only on the BBC. I think everywhere is changing, and there comes a stage when an old dog doesn't.
You must already have a pretty shrewd idea of what's happening. I mean,
I tell you what I do have, as I said before, I've got the idea of those who are listening like it. What I can't tell you from that is those who are listening, I can't tell you from that numbers up or down.
So you really don't know yet whether it's...
I don't know numbers up or down. I think the construct was done very carefully and shrewdly because it was done hand in hand with listeners. I don't expect it to fall. If there is a precipitate fall in listenership, then presumably I should go.
What is the meaning of the Latin phrase primus inter pares?
First one equals.
Correct. In Greek mythology, what name was given to the lowest part of the underworld, far below the realm of Hades, where Zeus confined the Titans?
Styx.
No, Tartarus. Protium, deuterium and tritium are isotopes of which chemical element?
Oxygen.
No, hydrogen, I'm afraid.
Sorry, yeah.
Who wrote Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats? The book
T.S.
of
Eliot. The
book of verse on which the stage musical Cats was based. I must finish the question.
T.S. Eliot.
Yes, correct. The pictures of the naked Macha and the clothed Macha, painted around 1800, were the work of which Spanish artist?
Goya.
Well done. Correct. Patricia Erridge, you have 13 points in that second round, making your total altogether of 21. Well, that brings us to the end of this heat of Mastermind 1998, and the final score is in third place equal, Meg Ellis and Patricia Erridge on 21. In second place...
I'll do my best. I'm, still preparing special subjects, hoping I'll get on something else, I'm still working on Arsenal Football Club. That was my second choice of subject. And I think I'll do a subject connected with royalty and perhaps old Victorian music hall. I like old Victorian music hall songs. I might, prepare those as well as, possible quiz subject.
If you would like to join an expedition to Suriname on the way, we can put you on expedition.
I feel, listening to Radio 4 these days, as if I've been dumped. I feel as if the love of my life has been flirting with some tart with Essex girl makeup and strappy sandals, and now he's gone off with her. Now, I don't think this is going to last. I understand Radio 4. Why hasn't Radio 4 stayed with me? I've stayed with it, and now I've been dumped.
I think it'll lose people, but it should bring new people to it. If it doesn't bring new people to it, start again. Do something else.
But from me and those of us who are all still here at Broadcasting House, may I wish you a very good night. And if you will be sleeping, sleep tight.
You know that Radio 4 is coming to the end when you hear this rather extraordinary and dated piece of music called Sailing By. It's like one of those things you hugged when you were 4-year-old that gave you all the support and comfort you need. Pure magic. And I think I will definitely never tune into Radio 4 again if they dare to cast Sailing By into the radio archives. No, that would be madness.
Starting tomorrow morning on BBC Radio 4, a new series looking at the ideas and events which have influenced our view of the world. In Our Time with Melvyn Bragg begins at 9.